hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com. WLBB, News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. We're going to talk a little bit about wokeness. Let's start with Western Europe. There are people who are actually now becoming awake, more awake, to what's been going on or what's been occurring to them, and they're saying no to it. In this case, it's dealing with radical Islam.
In the 6 months since becoming Chancellor, Sebastian Kurz has taken an even tougher line on immigration and what he says is the threat from parallel societies forming in his country. Now he's turning his sights on what he calls political Islam.
We can announce to you today a decision from the Office of Religious Affairs that will lead to the prohibition of the activities of 7 mosques. This means dissolving the Grey Wolves Mosque and secondly shutting down the Arab cultural community that operates a total of 6 mosques.
In addition to the closures, these measures could also see dozens of imams face expulsion from Austria, several of whom ministers in Vienna believe are funded by elements inside Turkey. A spokesman for the Turkish government has condemned the move as racist and anti-Islam. Kurz has long advocated a toughening of approach, but forming a coalition with the far-right anti-Islam Freedom Party last December seems to have been the catalyst for him to act. In April, his government announced plans to prevent girls in nurseries and primary schools from wearing headscarves.
We have a new climate, a political climate here in Austria since the last election. And with the new government that has been in power for a little more than half a year, you see various measures taken against foreigners, against immigrants, against Islam, and so on and so forth. This is just one more step or one more measure in their policy.
And that's what will interest far-right movements across Europe, but particularly in France, the Netherlands, and here in Berlin, where the Alternative for Germany party made a parliamentary breakthrough in last year's election on a platform of opposition to Islam. Dominic Kane, Al Jazeera, Berlin.
Fareed Hafiz from Georgetown University says the Austrian government is trying to interfere in religious affairs.
It is a message that is intended to be sent out to the Austrian electorate. I think there are many groups outside of Austria and other European countries who may applaud them, who may try to copy what they are doing. But we have to understand that also the state-church relation is very different in various countries throughout Europe. So Austria has a kind of a very specific understanding of what secularity and secularism should look like. And what they are doing at the moment is trying to interfere into religious affairs. So while in the United States you have the understanding that secularism means that the state is far away from religion, in Austria in terms of the Muslims only, it seems that they are trying to really define what a good religion should look like and what a bad religion should looks like. So they are kind of redefining the good Islam versus the bad Islam. This is the game they are playing. And it is not really about political Islam. It is rather really about the common Muslims, because when they close down the mosques, this is not like the mosques of radical extremist groups. This is like very randomly like mosques of established communities of the Islamic religious community.
Don't believe that a word of it. You heard both reports. They know exactly who they're going after. There's 7 mosques. There are about 60 particular imams. And there's an ideology attached to that. Now, of course, Islam is going to push back and try to say that it's anti-Islam, that it's racist, although I don't know how Islam became a race. That's not what it is. Europe, Western Europe, is finally getting tired of what immigration from majority Islamic countries is bringing them. It's bringing them rape, it's bringing them crime, it's bringing them tremendous stress upon public services. So they're saying no. If anybody's really upset about that, my question would be why? So someone has waked up or woke up in Western Europe and decided we're going to take your platform away, and then maybe we won't have the same problems. Something similar to that, but on a different scale, has actually happened here in the United States, dealing with the social justice warriors who make their living playing with a ball.
I didn't invite him. No, I didn't invite LeBron James, and I didn't invite Steph Curry. We're not going to invite either team. But we have other teams that are coming. You know, if you look, we had Alabama, national champion. We had Clemson, national champion. We had the New England Patriots. We have the Pittsburgh Penguins last year. I think we'll have the Caps. I mean, we'll see. You know my attitude. If they want to be here, it's the greatest place on earth. I'm here. If they don't want to be here, I don't want them.
This is big because you have to really understand what Trump is doing. Trump is actually beating the social justice warrior crowd that is in the major sports in this country to the punch. Not surprisingly, you got this reaction from the very soft gentleman in the NBA.
LeBron has spoken.
I mean, I know no matter who wins this series, no one wants to invite anyway, so it won't be Golden State or Cleveland going.
So it won't be Golden State or Cleveland going to the White House. Here's another norm that falls, though. I mean, these White House ceremonies can be fun. It's great for the fan base. They bring the trophy. And now we know that whoever wins in the NBA, sorry.
Right. Well, honestly, Brian, maybe J.R. Smith will go. He'll forget that they weren't supposed to go to the White House this time. I mean, you know, at the core issue here, it's that the president has demonstrated that there is nothing in American culture that he will not use to his advantage, regardless of what the consequences might be. This is deeper than just lying about players. This is deeper than just raising sort of racial bugaboos of pampered black athletes who don't deserve what they have. You know, there were programs and community service activities that these players were supposed to do in Washington, D.C. that got canceled. All of these things resonate when the president decides, I don't care what I have to do to people as long as I can try to make a political point. And I'll also say this, and I think this is really important. What also we saw with the Eagles this year, it runs against a consistent narrative from the right that protest is somehow bad for the bottom line or the antithesis of winning. You had politically active players on this team all season, and they still beat the New England Patriots, who are sort of a pro-Trump team, if we were to take and believe what Bill Belichick believes. So, again, he really, really dislikes this team, not just for the racial component, not because he thinks it's going to help him with his base, but because the Eagles represent everything that the president has tried to fight against, which is politically active black men, white men working together to solve structural issues in this country.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from...
This is a ridiculous statement. Actually, here's what's happened. Donald Trump has said, you know what? I don't play the game your way, where I set myself up for you to use me as your political punching bag. We don't do it that way. You're not the president. You're just a guy who plays with the ball. It's my platform. The White House is not someplace where you get to come out and show what you can do and what you think. That's not the way it works. He runs this stuff over there. And since you want to trash the country, and you know, we got to stop trying to say that these guys aren't trashing the country. They are. You want to put forth a different America than the American people are interested in, and you want to use the White House to do it, and this president is not interested in that. He says, okay, fine. You don't want to be here? I'm not going to give you the platform so you can start spouting off whatever your issues are. You go ahead and do your thing. If you want to be part of America, then the White House is for you. If you don't want to be part of America, then the White House is not for you. Do what you want. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. Because what this has now done is expose the NBA for being soft and even more anti-American in the thought process of many of its players than the NFL ever was. They're now out there. They have been outed. In the same way, this is similar to me, even though there's a different level of seriousness. In Western Europe, people are finally saying, we're going to take away the platform of majority Muslim countries to exploit us in our own country. In a similar manner, on a different plane, Donald Trump has done the same thing to social justice warriors in this country. I hope that Western Europe continues to wake up and starts pushing Muslims out of their country who do not want to be assimilated into them. And I also want the United States, working through this president or through someone else, to start getting out of this country social justice warriors who simply have a complaint and make no contribution. Let me make sure you understand this. What the Philadelphia Eagles are doing in their community, that's fine. You can do that. But if you're going to speak bad of the country in the process and try to trash America and trash American customs and say something bad in then we don't need that. And you don't need a platform for that. You go out and earn your platform. Playing with a ball does not earn you a platform. Just like having religion doesn't earn you a platform in another country. I think it's great. So we have woke folk in Western Europe finally. We have a very woke president in the White House. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, what we have now is lying born of desperation coming out of the Democrat Party. And to what am I referring?
Stay focused. Talk about things that matter to people. It's the economy, stupid.
Yep. That one subject that the mainstream media avoids like the plague when discussing the Trump administration because they can't find anything bad to say about it. And let me make this very clear. The American economy is never about the president. If the economy is going well, it is about what the American people are doing. It's more about what government is not doing. Because if government leaves the economy alone, it tends to do pretty well. But when the economy is not doing well, that usually means the government is overactive. At least in these days and times. But they don't want to talk about the economy. Well, they do talk, but here are some of the things that are coming out of the Democrat Party and being scoffed, and they should be mocked, as a result of the jobs report that was put out this last Friday.
Welcome back. Well, an hour before the May jobs report came out yesterday, the president tweeted he was excited to see the numbers. The report was excellent, an 18-year low in the unemployment rate, but the media made it all about that tweet. Listen.
A lot of people scratching their heads about why the president decided to tweet about it beforehand.
Why would the president tell all of America to look at the jobs numbers if the jobs numbers were not good?
He was so eager to trumpet the news, he broke years of presidential protocol.
Who needs insider trading? Well, you can get the cheat sheet directly from the president. It's hardly the first time the president has broken the rules when it comes to sharing sensitive, sometimes even classified information.
So he broke the rules. Here to react to all of this, the host of Varney & Co. on Fox Business, Stuart Varney.
Yes.
That wasn't the big story yesterday, though. The big story was the numbers, the jobs that came out. That is what the American people care about.
The media wants you to be distracted from the very good news about the economy. We got that great news at 8:30 yesterday. No matter what the president hinted beforehand, it was great news. And the media just wanted to distract and divert attention away from the news on jobs.
But it was insider trading, Stuart.
Oh, stop it. Come on, son. Get
but
out
there
of
is
here.
a protocol, and you're not supposed to break that. We should acknowledge that.
Yes,
now, I'm not...
did he break it? He merely hinted that it might be okay.
Right.
He got the news beforehand.
Obviously.
Okay, and he
The White House
tweeted
always
about
gets it the night
looking
before,
forward to the good news.
So then it becomes
And
all about the
That's
process.
not the story.
Yes.
That is not the story. Look at this. The story is 3.8% unemployment. Lowest in a generation. You've never seen that in this generation. 3.8%. 5.9%. That's the unemployment rate for black folks. That is an all-time low. It's never been down at that level before. Same story for Hispanics. 223,000 new jobs created. You're on the road to prosperity.
No,
Isn't
not according to
that the
Nancy
story?
Pelosi. No, Nancy Pelosi said, look at this.
Tell me.
May's jobs report shows that strong employment numbers mean little to the families hit with soaring new costs under the Republicans' watch. Remember, first she was talking about crumbs with the tax cut.
I remember.
Now she's saying these job numbers don't help anybody.
Is that insulting?
Well, I don't know about insulting, but it's a message of desperation, isn't it? The Democrats do not have a growth plan. They don't have one. So they have to criticize the president's growth plan because it is working. And it is working. You know, the president came to office saying, I'm going to make America great again. And the keystone to that whole operation was deregulate and lower taxes. He did both. And now we're seeing the fruits of that.
What is she referring to there, though, in that comment, when she says it is going up for some families?
You could make the argument that gasoline prices are up a little. That is true. You can make the argument that mortgage rates are up a little. That is accurate. She could make the argument that healthcare costs are rising, but that's not because of President Trump. That is because of Obamacare lingers on in our economy.
So she's looking for the lemons in the lemonade, which, of course, she would do being in the minority. But when they do have a growth plan, it's a government growth plan. I mean, her view is we solve these problems by growing government programs for people.
Stop it, Peter.
It's a growth plan. It's a growth plan.
Yeah, that growth plan is tax and spend. Of course. It does not produce growth. It produces stable... No, I'm not going to say stable economy, certainly not. It produces virtually no growth for a long period of time. The best we got in the 8 years of tax and spend Obama years was 2%. That's all we got. We've now had 15 months of the Trump economy, and we've got 3% growth. And I think we've got a very good shot at going to 4% growth by the end of this year.
Yeah, you know, I was looking at numbers last night just to compare where we are. You forget back in October 2009, 10% unemployment. How far we've come. You know?
Sure. We've come a very, very long way,
Yeah.
especially in the last 15, 16 months of the Trump presidency. We are on the road to prosperity. The Democrats cannot admit that going into the November elections.
All right. Stuart Varney, appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
So the message is clear. The economy is doing well, but we can't admit that. We had to find something to say that is negative about Trump. So we'll say, you know what, he tweeted about the number before it came out. He didn't say what the number was. He just said he was happy to see it. Well, now he's doing insider trade. Come on, really? You're dealing with desperate people. Desperate people. Because the economy is doing well, and people have high confidence in the economy right now simply because they're running it. But that's not good enough for Nancy Pelosi, apparently.
Hip, hip, hooray, unemployment is down. What does that mean to me in my life? I need a bigger paycheck. And that's the apprehension that American families have had. The economy will never fully reach its possibilities unless we increase the consumer confidence.
Nancy Pelosi talking about consumer confidence and downplaying the success of the economy under President Trump, but the numbers don't lie, with a new Fox News poll showing 52% approve of Donald Trump's economy. Grover Norquist is the president of Americans for Tax Reform. He joins us right now. Grover, I don't know, apparently she's not an economist, because currently unemployment is near a 50-year low, and she said we really need better consumer confidence. It is at an 18-year high. Right now it's at 128, they tell us.
She's running out of excuses. Remember, Americans for Tax Reform listed all of the bonuses and pay increases and benefit increases that many companies were rolling out in December, January, and she called that crumbs. These were, $1,000 bonuses.
Sure.
Walmart gave $5,000 for an adoption cost as part of their benefit packages. People got more 401k, more IRA pension money put up. She poo-pooed that. Now she's belittling lower unemployment, historically low unemployment, increasing wages.
Right.
She wants a wage increase. She wants to be speaker. The disappointment in her voice is she's never going to be speaker now because the economy is growing as strong as it is.
Yeah, and don't the Democrats just look tone deaf when they talk like that?
Well, it's never a good idea to badmouth the American people or to poo-poo their successes.
Hip, hip, hooray.
Americans are creating these jobs on their own, by the way. They don't fall out of trees. They're going out and going to work and creating jobs and opportunities, new businesses, small businesses starting up. This is extremely helpful. It's part deregulation. It's a lot the tax cut.
And speaking of the tax cuts, you have been on this program for the last over a year talking about them, and now there's a hidden bonus, and that is 101 utilities, electric utilities, have cut their rates because they're paying lower taxes. That's going to impact everybody who gets their juice from those companies.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got the list of those at atr.org on our website. It's 100 million American households and small businesses, 100 million American households and small businesses will have lower utility rates. Why? Because utilities pay taxes just like any other business. When we cut the tax rate on businesses, it's about $3 billion that flows straight to all your listeners, everybody who has water utility, electricity. The Democrats have announced if they get power, they will raise the business taxes again and increase your monthly utility bill every year.
And I've got a feeling the Republicans will remind that before folks go to vote in November. Grover Norquist, always a pleasure. Have a great weekend, sir.
Steve, good to see you.
That is what's happening. If you want to get past everything, you want to get past the LeBronianism, and we'll talk about that later. You want to get past all the nonsense that's going on in G7. I'm not talking about that. But if you want to get cut past all this prison reform, toxic femininity, you want to get past whatever's going on in Europe and everything else, just talk about the economy. The American economy compared to what it was under the last presidential administration is going gangbusters. It is off the chain. With upside left, it can still go higher. The Democrats have no economic program because their plans for America never contemplated economic success. What it contemplated was economic complacency while productivity and profits were bled off to other countries. And they've been exposed. Donald Trump is not the one who exposed them. The American people decided they would no longer be pawns and cannon fodder for globalism, and they voted against the globalists. And they had been doing that since 2009, but the globalists believed all they needed was one more presidential term, and they put in the most despicable candidate possible, calling her the most qualified person ever to run, and the American people saw through it and said, no. Let me help you out. The 2016 election was an anti-Clinton, anti-Obama, anti-progressive, anti-globalist choice by the electorate more than it was pro-Trump. Trump's message has been the message they've been saying for at least a decade. Can we put America first? Can we do that? And he said, yes, let's do that. And as a result, the Democrats are on the verge of becoming a fringe political party, no longer a major political party. And if you become the fringe political party in a two-party system, man, that's going to be rough. They are losing where it matters most in the ability of people to provide for themselves and their families and to keep what they earn while enjoying services from government. They're losing on that message across the board. And with Kim Kardashian being able to walk into the White House and get a commutation of a prisoner's sentence, they're not doing real well on the social justice issues either. This is just cluelessness on the part of Democrats, and they're raising it up to an art form. It's enjoyable, and if they keep it up, November is not going to be pretty for them. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. So when is the ACA just like the DOMA? So when is Obamacare like DOMA? Well, when the government refuses to defend those laws and actively works to undermine them. The Defense of Marriage Act, which was passed back in 1996, signed by then President Bill Clinton, defined marriage as a union between one man and one woman, and did that as a federal law. That was obviously very popular among Democrats at the time, back in 1996. But, of course, the Republicans controlled Congress. But Bill Clinton had no problem signing the law. And if I remember correctly, it passed with very strong support, bipartisan support in both chambers. Then you had Obama. And Obama, back in February of 2011, decided that DOMA wasn't such a good idea.
The President's position on the Defense of Marriage Act has been consistent. He has long opposed it as unnecessary and unfair. The Attorney General recommended that the higher level of scrutiny be applied, and under that higher level of scrutiny deemed or recommended that it be viewed as unconstitutional. The President reviewed that recommendation and concurred. Therefore, again, because of the court-imposed deadline and the necessity that this decision be made, our announcement was made. The President's personal view on same-sex marriage, I think you all have heard him discuss as recently as a press conference at the end of last year. That is distinct from this legal decision. And he, again, the Attorney General and the President were under a court-imposed deadline to make a decision. It is also important to note that the enforcement of the Defense of Marriage Act continues. The President is constitutionally bound to enforce the laws, and enforcement of the DOMA will continue.
We'll enforce it, but we won't defend it if it is challenged in court. Okay. Does that sound like what happened back on the 7th of June with respect to Obamacare?
The Justice Department says it will not defend the Affordable Care Act in a lawsuit filed by Texas and 19 other states. According to the Wall Street Journal, the DOJ is asking a federal court to strike down key provisions of the law, saying it believes the individual mandate is unconstitutional. The individual mandate requires people to buy insurance or pay a penalty. The Supreme Court upheld the measure in 2012. Last year, Congress did away with the penalty. The filing creates new uncertainty for insurers who are setting rates for 2019.
Sounds pretty familiar. Just like Obama was bound to defend DOMA, though he wasn't going to defend it if anybody challenged it in court, the Trump administration is bound to enforce Obamacare. And they will not defend it against a pending lawsuit in court where 20 states are basically saying it needs to go by the way of the dodo bird. So, is there a difference? Now, in the case of the Defense of Marriage Act, it did undergo a Supreme Court challenge for the only real provision that actually mattered. And that was basically defining marriage as the union of one man and one woman for the purposes of federal law. That was struck down, and CNN could not have been more pleased.
DOMA is gone. This is a major, broadly written opinion which strikes down the law on the ground that it discriminates against gay people. This isn't a decision about states' rights. This isn't a narrowly written decision. This is a decision that says the federal government, by passing DOMA, demeans those persons who are in a lawful same-sex marriage. That's a quote from the opinion. This opinion says that the federal government cannot discriminate against people who have valid same-sex marriages. They are entitled to file joint federal tax returns. They are entitled to Social Security survivors' benefits. They are entitled to be informed when their spouses are killed in action. This is a decision that says gay people have equal rights under the federal Constitution when it comes to this statute.
That, of course, was June of 2013, and I am just struck by how hard the guy worked to talk about a broad decision, broadly written decision, while trying to still talk about how it is narrowly construed. His idea of a broad decision was 5-4, by the way. So this could be revisited again. And I hate to tell you this, progressives, but same-sex unions and changing laws to accommodate them is not something that is as popular with the American electorate as you seem to believe. The American electorate is very simple in their assessment. If you guys want to do this thing, that's fine. Don't disturb my thing for you to do your thing. And if any part of your thing impinges on my thing, I don't approve of that. Because we've been doing well without your thing for quite some time. That is very interesting. Now, the Washington Post put together back last week an interesting listing of everything they believe the Trump administration has done to undermine the Affordable Care Act, similar to what was done, the effect of what was done by striking Section 3 of DOMA, which is where it said exactly what the definition of marriage was. Here is their recital of everything that Trump has done to the Affordable Care Act.
President Trump signed an executive order to tear down parts of the Affordable Care Act's regulations on October 12th, and then cut off the ACA's federal payments to insurers for cost-sharing reductions. The move comes after promising to repeal and replace Obamacare on the campaign trail.
It's over for Obamacare.
Facing months of frustration with Congress for not passing a health care overhaul.
Disappointed.
And then continuously saying he would let Obamacare implode.
Let Obamacare implode.
Trump's administration had already cut the ACA's budget for advertising its open enrollment period, shortened the open enrollment timeframe, and reduced funding for its community outreach program. Now Trump is actively ending critical payments to health insurers and removing and altering ACA regulations on association health plans and short-term insurance policies, which could have a ripple effect on costs and coverage. Cost-sharing reductions reimburse insurers for providing plans for millions of lower-income Americans. Ending the government's payments for them is grounds for any insurer to leave its federal contract to sell health plans in 2018. The availability of short-term insurance policies, which only covered about 160,000 people nationwide last year, will be expanded, and its length extended from 3 months to nearly a year. Association health plans availability will also be expanded. This is a type of insurance where similar small businesses are allowed to band together, forming an association, to negotiate health benefits. The arrangements have existed for decades, but Trump's order will exempt them from many ACA requirements, like the required coverage of certain health benefits. This would lower the price tag for association health plans and draw healthy, young customers away from ACA marketplaces, whose rates would then spike. But the association health plans will largely provide skimpier coverage, since companies will be able to go outside of the ACA's markets and protections. And allowing individuals to enter these associations could spark legal complaints, experts warn. Proponents say that the moves will promote healthcare choice and competition. Critics say they will drive up costs for consumers with serious medical conditions and prompt more insurers to leave the ACA's marketplaces, leaving sicker consumers with fewer insurers and higher costs. Trump, they say, seeks to undermine the ACA and make it unpopular so that enough lawmakers come on board with the GOP's plans to completely repeal and replace it.
He's gutting the thing like a fish, which is no different than what striking down Section 3 of DOMA did to that law. The idea that the Affordable Care Act is popular is kind of undermined by the fact that Donald Trump is president, and that was one of his major campaign promises, to do away with Obamacare. If that was not what the American people wanted, there was another choice to be made, and it appeared on the ballot. They chose Trump. So when I say this, Obamacare and DOMA are being treated one and the same. It's just a matter of how you view things. If you view marriage as something other than what was designed by the Creator, then you're happy with what the Obama administration and subsequently a Supreme Court challenge did to DOMA. If not, then you have a problem. If you are of the opinion that the government should not be trying to provide hospitalization and health care for everybody under the sun, which is socialism, then you are not. Then, if you believe that that should be occurring, you're definitely unhappy with President Trump. If, by the way, you think that that is not a federal responsibility, and the idea that the federal government can tell you what to buy and penalize you if you do not buy it, is still considered unconstitutional by many, except for Justice Roberts, Chief Justice Roberts, then you have no problem with what Donald Trump has done with the Affordable Care Act. And to date, we don't have any indication that the American electorate has great problems with it either. And that is what's interesting. So here's the difference from a freedom or a liberty, more importantly, a liberty and a morality perspective, the difference between the ACA and the DOMA. The former should never have been enacted. And in a free society that is moral, the latter should never have been needed. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, talkamericaradio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the first hour. It looks like we're getting ready to do to Dodd-Frank what we're pretty much accomplished with Obamacare. You may recall the only two significant pieces of legislation passed during the Obama administration were the Unaffordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and the Dodd-Frank regulations, which were supposed to regulate banking in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. You will know, of course, that Obamacare, through a change in regulations and the most recent tax reform legislation that was passed and enacted into law, Obamacare is a dead man walking. It's not at the federal level. It really doesn't do much to or for anyone. What is happening at the state level? They could have done that at any time anyway. No one ever cared. That's why Romney Care was in Massachusetts, tearing that state apart even before the 2012 election. Nevertheless, Obamacare does not have the teeth. In particular, the individual mandate is gone. It was taken apart piece by piece. We're seeing the same thing happening with Dodd-Frank. Back in May, a measure was passed, and this is reported on by the Washington Post, Congress approving a plan to roll back post-financial crisis rules for banks. And in that, it made the most significant changes to weaken the Dodd-Frank banking regulations since they were passed. It would exempt some small and regional banks from the most stringent regulations and would loosen rules aimed at protecting biggest banks from sudden collapse. In other words, too big to fail is a thing of the past. One of the things it did not do is it didn't touch the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, an agency that was created in along with the Dodd-Frank regulation, and that was there to protect people from bad lending practice, etc., and so on. Well, that legislation didn't get it, but Trump did by appointing Mick Mulvaney, his budget director, as also the director of the CFPB. He started cleaning house last week.
Acting Director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Mick Mulvaney, reportedly fired all 25 members of the Bureau's Consumer Advisory Board on Wednesday. The board helps identify the impact that emerging market trends, practices, and services might have on consumers, including problems facing Americans treated unfairly by firms. Critics are concerned that Mulvaney has been weakening the CFPB from within. Mulvaney became acting director last year. While in Congress, he was critical of the watchdog group. On Monday, 11 members of the panel criticized Mulvaney for canceling the only 2 meetings the board had planned for the year and said the Bureau was moving away from helping everyday Americans. The CFPB will reportedly reform the group in the fall with all new members. The Washington Post reports the members Mulvaney fired were told they could not reapply for the board.
Fired and could not reapply. Wow. That sounds remarkably like
hit the road, Jack. Don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more. What you say? Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more.
It comes as no news to anyone at this point that Mick Mulvaney is not a fan of the CFPB. As a matter of fact, during his confirmation hearings, he made it very clear exactly what he thought of the organization.
There was a time at which you were quite critical of the CFPB, stating that, I've got to get the right page in front of me, but if I paraphrase, that it's a sad, sick joke. Do you still believe that CFPB is a sad, sick joke?
Yes, sir, I do, and I'll be happy to tell you why. It is, to me, sir, one of the most offensive concepts, I think, in a representative government, which is almost completely unaccountable government bureaucracy, government regulatory agency. One of the most frustrating experiences I've had since I've been in Congress is people walking into my office and asking me for help, and having me look them in the eye and say, I'm sorry, there's no way under any circumstance that I can help you. And that's what I've been forced to do with the CFPB. Because they are off appropriations, because we don't budget for them, because they're run by essentially a one-person dictator who believes he can't even be fired by the president but for cause, we have created, perhaps inadvertently, the very worst kind of government entity.
This has actually worked. I mean, if you take a look at how to create an effective organization fighting for ordinary working Americans, I mean, this is it.
Senator, all I can tell you is I've had probably more complaints about the CFPB in my office from small local banks and credit unions, which I'm not from a big bank area, than every other government agency put together. So I respectfully disagree with you, sir.
What you see there is the contrast between progressives and a capitalist. And a capitalist who actually has to deal with the result of what progressives have put in place. The progressive is saying, how dare you talk about this agency and don't you recognize that it's helping people? And the capitalist who has to deal with people is saying, I don't get complaints about anything else as like I get complaints about this. This is what people are coming into my office saying, can you help me? And in a representative government, you have created an agency, and this is the province of progressives, that is unaccountable to anyone and therefore can wield its power. It is funded by the people but not accountable to the people because it's helping the people. In other words, instead of creating agencies of help, they're creating parentages. That's the only way I can think of to describe it. I'm trying to come up with some other way to deal with that, but there really isn't one, and that's the problem. Now, while Democrats and progressives in government, including Elizabeth Warren, and CFPB was kind of her brainchild, and there was some stories going about back when it was created that she should be its first director, and that didn't happen. And, of course, she is beside herself that Mick Mulvaney is in there because he is really doing some work on the place. As a matter of fact, he has actually put the organization in a real cold environment, so to speak.
They should expect that this agency will stay open. Rumors that I'm going to set the place on fire or blow it up or lock the doors are completely false. I'm a member of the executive branch of government. We intend to execute the laws of the United States, including the provisions of Dodd-Frank that govern the CFPB. That being said, the way we go about it, the way we interpret it, the way we enforce it will be dramatically different under the current administration than it was under the last. Yeah, the president has made it very clear he wants me here, and honestly, since my name's on the door now, I want to be here. I don't want anything coming out of here that I don't know about. He wants me to fix it. He wants me to get it back to the point where it can protect people without trampling on capitalism, without choking off the access to financial services that are so critical to so many folks. We put a 30-day hiring freeze here at CFPB. Probably more importantly, we put a 30-day immediate freeze on any new rules, regulation, and guidance. Anything that's in the pipeline stops for at least 30 days while I get a chance to see exactly what's going on. If the law allowed this place not to exist, I'd sit down with the president and try and make the case that other agencies can probably do this job just as, or if not more effectively.
Hiring freeze on regulations, make the case to get rid of it. He's not there to burn it down, but he has no problem if there's an opening to make the case to get rid of it. Here is the thing that people keep missing. Capitalism is why the United States has by far the largest economy and most productive economy in the history of mankind. It is the only thing that has those others who are even in second place. China is a communist nation that actually practices forms of capitalism to grow its economy. That's why it is, along with the sheer size of its population, the number 2 economy. And it is still. You still have to add another half again of the Chinese economy to itself to catch the United States. That's how big the United States economy is. And that's all because of capitalism. Progressives do not like capitalism, so they put things in place to try to put brakes on capitalism because they think it's unfair. Life is not fair. And fortune favors the bold. It favors those who take risks and work hard, as it should. And trying to make everyone equal because you don't like the fact that some people win and some people do not, when everyone has the same opportunity to compete. Yes, they do. In this country, everybody has the same opportunity to compete. You just don't necessarily have to compete directly with everybody. Nevertheless, one thing that's being overlooked here is the idea, the monolithic idea that progressives put forward that the CFPB is helpful to everybody. That's not an idea that is shared by people who have worked there. The outgoing spokesman in the Washington Examiner, they ran a report talking about the firing back on the 6th of June, in which the CFPB spokesman, who was outgoing, took a parting shot at the well, he's not going, but the spokesman took a parting shot at the outgoing advisory board members in a statement to the Washington Post, suggesting that they appeared to be more concerned about protecting their taxpayer-funded junkets to Washington, D.C. and being wined and dined by the Bureau than about protecting consumers. Well, he's a part of the Trump administration, Well, maybe. You can say that. He's still there. He's not losing his job. But a former member of the CFPB had this to say to the Daily Signal back in November of last year.
By the way, no other agency has that kind of thing, right? I mean, the Department of Education has to lobby for their dollars before Congress. I mean, all the agencies have to go before Congress and make a budget, but CFPB does not.
I'm not 100% sure that there might not be some very minor agencies through the government, but nothing with the kind of powers that this agency has. So really the simplest explanation is absolute power corrupts absolutely. And even the best intentioned people, given the ability to have no oversight, will end up going off the rails and covering up things that they do wrong. And when finally Mr. Mulvaney and Republicans take over, you're going to see what's been going on inside this agency for the last 6 years.
So a guy who worked there just told you, the place is corrupt. And one of the reasons it's corrupt is because there's no accountability. Everyone else is accountable to Congress, which makes it accountable to the people because they have to go make a budget, and that has to be argued, and Congress has to appropriate that money. But the CFPB was getting their money no matter what, and they didn't have to answer to anybody, and that had been going on for 6 years. And once Trump's people got in, you were going to see that. Now, of course, the progressives are going to do everything they can to keep you from seeing that. That's their job. That's what they do. But understand this. The CFPB is a dream organization that uses government power without accountability and even wields more power than elected government officials, all in the name of helping people to be their voice while it gives them no voice at all, because where do you go to push back against the CFPB? You heard the congressman saying people were coming into his office and he could not help them. This whole idea of seeking equality, fake equality at the expense of real losses of liberty, is why progressivism never works, why it must fail, and why it's time to burn their playhouse down. And if that means Dodd-Frank goes the way of the dodo bird, that's not a bad deal. I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and then after that we'll be back with hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
To tell lies is one thing, but for the people to believe those lies could literally kill our republic. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, a leftist dictator once said to tell a lie and to tell it often enough, and the people will believe it. Such has been the case in America for far too long. The left told Americans that unborn babies were blobs and it was okay to murder them. Well, thanks to modern technology and the Word of God, that lie has been put to rest, and I see on the horizon an end to wholesale abortion in our republic. The Word of God also says, I will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. For the most part, Americans are inundated with lying propaganda against Israel. In government schools and the media, we are told that Israel should give up more and more land to appease the Palestinians. But that is a big fat lie, because the Palestinians were given numerous chances to dictate specifically what they want in order to have peace with Israel. But the truth is, the Palestinians, Iranians, and others only want to wipe the apple of God's eye off the earth. Our current president has not bought into the lie, and as he blesses Israel, so will America be blessed. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Men Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it's made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problems. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, AmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com. And WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. I'm going to be a little bit disrespectful with this title and call this segment Sista SexTape Goes to Washington and Gets Someone Kicked. And by that I'm referring to Kim Kardashian making the effort to go to the White House to talk to the president regarding prison reform.
Today, one of the world's most recognizable stars went to the White House to fight for a woman few have heard of. After 21 years in a federal prison on drug charges, Kim Kardashian wants President Trump to grant 62-year-old great-grandmother Alice Marie Johnson a pardon. Kardashian took up Johnson's cause months ago after seeing her story on Mike.com.
I made one of the worst decisions of my life to make some quick money. I became involved in a drug conspiracy.
Kardashian reportedly lobbied Jared Kushner on Johnson's behalf.
She spent over 2 decades behind bars. I think that she really deserves a second chance at life.
A federal judge sentenced Johnson to life without parole in 1997, describing her as the leader and, quote, quintessential entrepreneur of a $50 million drug ring with ties to the Cali cartel.
We didn't feel that, she didn't deserve any punishment.
But her daughter says the punishment didn't match the crime.
She's not a danger. There is zero chance of her committing any crimes or anything like that. It's just she's taking up space in federal prison.
Advocates for sentence reform say there are thousands of prisoners serving life without parole in the federal system on drug charges.
The underlying problem is the mandatory sentences applied in the war on drugs. These have been a failure for 30 years. It's time to turn that around.
The administration has actively fought congressional efforts to change drug sentencing laws. But today, a reality TV star on a mission hopes one woman will get a reprieve. Stephanie Gosk, NBC News, New York.
Well, there's a hint of disingenuousness regarding that. Trump, as well as the Attorney General Sessions, are actually on board with prison reform. They're just not on board with sentencing overhaul. The interesting thing to me is the idea that the sentences that people are complaining about, particularly the black community, are ones for which they vehemently advocated some 30 years ago with Jesse Jackson. The issue being the disparity at that time for sentencing regarding offenses, whether they be powder cocaine related or rock cocaine related. Black people wanted harsher sentences for rock cocaine. They got it. And now here we are so many years later complaining about the quote unquote unintended consequences. That still brings us back to the question, how did Kim Kardashian get her round hips up in the White House?
Miss Kardashian goes to Washington, and she's sitting down with President Trump. The reality TV star is going straight to the top, seeking clemency for a great-grandmother serving a life sentence for a first-time nonviolent drug offense.
If you think about a decision that you've made in your life and you get life without the possibility of parole for your first-time nonviolent offense, there's just something so wrong with that.
Kardashian has been communicating with the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, which led to today's meeting with Trump in the Oval Office. The inmate is 63-year-old Alice Johnson, who's been behind bars for 21 years in Alabama. We spoke to her daughter, Katina Scales. Can you guys believe that Kim Kardashian is going to bat for your mom?
Our family has been thrilled that someone with her celebrity status
has decided to come in and truly help her.
Kim is certain to get a friendly reception when she meets the president. After all, her husband, Kanye West, is a huge Trump supporter.
I just love Trump. That's my boy.
So she gets in there because her husband is actually a Trump supporter, her husband being Kanye West. I like what the daughter of the released woman, or the woman on whose behalf Kim Kardashian sought an audience with the president, someone who actually came in and tried to help. So where are the rest of the prison folks? Where are they at? I wonder. So she got there because someone actually likes Trump, and she was willing to talk to Trump, which seems to be quite the opposite of some of the others who are looking for all these different reforms because they're part of the resistance. They have to resist Trump. For her part, Alice Marie Johnson was simply ecstatic and over the moon after her release.
I'm feeling no handcuffs, nothing on me. I'm free to hug my family. I'm free to live life. I'm free to start over. I cannot. This is the greatest day of my life. I cannot. My heart is just bursting with gratitude for what has taken place, what has happened to me today. I heard my name called over the intercom. I had just sat down for lunch. And I had to report back to my unit team. And when I got there, my case manager, Mr. Holler, he was calling. I knew I had an attorney call, but I still didn't know what it was. And when they all came on, then I heard Kim Kardashian's voice. And she was the one who told me that that it had happened, that I was free, that I was going to rejoin my family. Oh my God. I've always called her my angel, but then she turned into my war angel. Because only war angels never give up. I mean, she has truly been relentless in her fight for me. And to know a woman who has never met me, who has embraced my story and taken me into her heart, not just, and this is not a publicity thing for her. Kim told me when she left that White House meeting that no matter how this turns out, that she will never stop fighting for me until I come home. So she's an incredible woman, an amazing woman. God bless all of y'all, too, for even covering this. And I have to say this, God bless America, too. Oh, I will not waste this second chance in life. I believe that God has given me this second chance so that others may one day have a second chance. So I have an obligation not only to my family who has waited all of these years for me, but an obligation to the people who have been left behind.
A black person saying, God bless America. And of course, not very often do you hear Kim Kardashian spoken of in such glowing terms for something other than her appearance. I think this is all positive. And of course, Donald Trump was getting credit as well. Haven't seen too many black people willing to do that either. I find that just kind of fascinating. However, those on the left have a problem with it. The progressive movement does have a problem with it. Let's start with the white progressives who don't like the fact, apparently, that Alice Johnson was released.
How you doing, Congressman Cohen? Congressman, somebody you fought for, Alice Walker, has just been granted clemency by the president. You fought for her heart. Is it a good thing right now?
It's not a good thing because other people have served. I'm for her getting out, but there are a lot of people that have served longer sentences and are just as unjustly incarcerated, and their sentences should be commuted. It should be done based on the inequity of your sentence and not the star power of your sponsor.
So it was a little difficult because Kim Kardashian came in and talked to the president and it happened automatically?
Yeah, there should be a system where anybody who's in jail for victims of crime like that and served X amount of years should be out, home, free, done.
Thank you.
Distribution of dangerous narcotics is a victimless crime. Interesting concept. And the idea that there is not a system to deal with release of prisoners who may have been either inappropriately convicted or unfairly sentenced, that already exists. Guess what? It happens the same way that they are convicted and sentenced, individually based on the conditions and evidence and facts of each case. And that's exactly how this was dealt with, based on the evidence and the facts regarding this case. and the president simply decided to commute the sentence. It is supposed to be an individual process. Cohen, a white progressive, would rather it be some type of wholesale maneuver where they can just open the floodgates and turn all these people loose on society as though there was not a reason to put them away in the first place. That doesn't make sense. On the other side, the progressive pets of color, maybe someone will remember this little tete-a-tete last month between Meek Mill and Jay-Z.
Alright, so this just happened. Look, so Meek Mill will no longer be attending a White House summit on prison reform, according to TMZ. Donald Trump is scheduled to deliver remarks at the summit, and Meek felt that appearing alongside the president could distract from his message of bringing positive change to the criminal justice system. Meek provided a statement to TMZ to explain his change of heart. I was originally scheduled to be a part of a panel on prison reform at the White House to help shed light on the issues within the system. Unfortunately, the focus turned to the president and myself, which concerned me that it might take away from creating a positive result from today's discussions. TMZ also reports that the decision came after Jay-Z called his Rock Nation artists to discourage him from the visit. Meek also reportedly got calls from other quote-unquote high-profile African Americans who advised him against it. TMZ reports that Jay-Z called Meek Thursday night and made it clear that meeting with Trump would be problematic for his image and for the cause. So what do you guys think? Should Meek have made that White House trip or just kind of stay away from Donald Trump?
And that's where we are to begin with. The resistance, particularly the black resistance, has gone after anyone who's willing to speak to Donald Trump. They are coons, they are sellouts, they are Uncle Toms, they are every other conceivable name you can mention just for having a conversation with Donald Trump as though Donald Trump is a racist. Donald Trump has never been a racist. He's not a racist now. I don't care about the Central Park Five. That's not racism. I don't care that he's doing something now. Well, he's just doing this for votes. No, Donald Trump has been compassionate to different people for no other reason than he felt it was the right thing to do for various reasons. That includes black people like Jennifer Hudson, whom he put up for free in his Chicago hotel and gave her family security after members of her family were murdered. This is ridiculous. Here is the problem. If you want to get things done in America, in the federal government, you need to go talk to Trump. And the nice thing about Trump as compared to other presidents, particularly the last one that was in office, is almost anybody who wants to talk to Trump can. And now you actually get results. It's not about your cause. It's not about being down. It's about results. Alice Marie Johnson is a result. Meek Mill and Jay-Z haven't busted a grape, but they had a chance. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com. And WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. So the Black Like Me chick has turned welfare queen. By that, I do refer to the former Ms. Rachel Dolezal. Seems like she has changed her name now that she has been outed as changing her identity. For those who do not recall the particulars of her story, I'm going to refer you back to the time back in 2015 when she was forced to resign from her post as the Spokane, Washington NAACP chapter president.
Today, civil rights advocate Rachel Dolezal resigned from the NAACP after it was revealed she is a white woman masquerading as an African American. John Blackstone is covering.
For years before Rachel Dolezal became president of the Spokane chapter of the NAACP in January, she has been representing herself as black. Today, she resigned, saying in a statement, "The dialogue has unexpectedly shifted internationally to my personal identity in the context of defining race and ethnicity. Her resignation letter does not address her true racial identity, but her family does. Her father, Larry Dolezal.
Her true birth ethnicity is Caucasian.
Her parents say she grew up blonde and blue-eyed. In a statement today, they said she's been trying for several years to erase the reality of her true ethnicity as a white woman. Her claims began to unravel after questions arose when a photo posted online showed her with an African-American man she identified as her father. When CBS affiliate Crem asked her last week about her race, Dolezal dodged the question.
The cause is justice. What's most important to me is maintaining the integrity of the work.
But critics say her integrity, not her race, is the issue. Qatar McClure is a community activist who worked with Dolezal.
No one has said that she didn't do any work in the community. We're just saying you can't stand in a role of leadership and represent our community when all your statements are questioned with the validity.
In 2002, Dolezal, who was a student at Howard, at a historically black university, filed a lawsuit claiming discrimination because she was white. The suit was dismissed. Cornell Williams-Brooks heads the national NAACP.
It's important for us to focus on not reality TV and all of the circus around those kinds of things, but to focus on real issues, real challenges to our democracy.
Here in Spokane, city officials are launching an ethics investigation into whether Dolezal lied about her race. Scott to be appointed to city commissions.
John Blackstone reporting. John, thank you very much.
So how bad is this chick? She filed a federal discrimination lawsuit while she was at Howard University, going there, no word that she graduated, claiming racial discrimination because she acknowledged that she was white back in 2002. But now she has been trying to erase, in the words of her parents for the last several years, this was before 2015, the actuality of her Caucasian ethnicity. This sounds like someone who is mentally ill. Why would you do that? And why would your story change so much over the course of, to be honest, not that many years? You were born white, and then you go to a black school, so you're really not comfortable with who you are, but you want to be recognized and treated fairly, so you sue people on behalf of your true ethnicity not being represented well. You lost the lawsuit, by the way, and then you come and join the NAACP and lie about who you are and rise to the top of the organization in that area of the country. You don't think this is a problem? I'd say it's a problem. And now it has become a bigger problem. Back a couple of weeks ago, 24th of May, KXLY up in the Spokane area ran this story about Rachel Dolezal.
Tonight, breaking news in the KXLY4 Story Tracker. The story's making headlines right now, and it is sure to get a lot of national attention, too. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nadine Woodward. She just appeared in a Netflix documentary, but the next appearance for Rachel Dolezal will be Spokane Superior Court. KXLY4's Aaron Luna working for you with why Spokane's controversial figure could now be facing jail time. Aaron?
And Nadine, for those that may not be familiar, Rachel Dolezal, the former NAACP president here in Spokane, lied about her heritage, saying she was African American when her parents were white. And since that revelation, Dolezal went on to write a book about her experience and just recently was the star of a Netflix documentary about her life. Now, however, she's being charged with felony welfare fraud. According to court documents, Rachel Dolezal, who changed her name to Nkechi Diallo back in 2016, alleged that Dolezal misreported income to Washington's Department of Social and Health Services. And court documents show Dolezal asked the state for help with living expenses, food assistance, and child care back in 2015. At the time, she reported zero income. Over the course of the next 3 years, she continued to receive money from the state. However, records show she was making money from her soap company, book deal, and speaking engagements. The state says Dolezal was paid nearly $9,000 she didn't deserve. Court records show in that 3-year period, her bank statements recorded more than $83,000 deposited in her bank account. She's facing charges of first-degree theft by welfare fraud, perjury in the second degree, and false verification for public assistance. She'll go before a judge June 6 for a formal reading of her charges. Nadine?
All right, thank you for that, Aaron.
Felony welfare fraud. Changed her name to Nkechi Diallo. Diallo. The social justice warriors are very well acquainted with the surname Diallo. Traces back to a NYPD shooting of some time back. So let me get this straight. This woman has a problem with who she is. She's lying to everybody. And now she's lying to the state of Washington about her income so that she can receive public assistance, lying about her ethnicity, lying about her income, changing her name, doing everything she can to deny who and what she is. Another guy on the same TV station, KXLY, up in the Spokane, Washington area, laid things out in a manner that I thought was brilliant, because you'll notice that if you talk to the black people about this, it's really not about her. We need to be focused on the issues. How can I get focused on the issues when the spokesman regarding the issues can't even acknowledge who she is and goes out of her way to deny it? Why would I listen to such a person about any issue?
The main focus of my channel is media criticism and analysis, so that's why I cover many of the stories I do and research the topics in detail. The story about the white woman pretending to be a black person is another example of where most of the media is missing the point. Here is the point. Rachel Dolezal has been claiming that she's been the victim of multiple hate crimes. 8 crimes, including receiving hate mail in the NAACP's post office box. And an important point is that mail had no postal date stamp or barcode. And that's the story that the reporter who confronted her about her claims about being a black person was covering. He wasn't trying to be mean to her. And here's that reporter following up on that story.
Today we asked her that since she had a key to the post office box, was it possible that she put that envelope in there herself?
I don't know that I even have any words for that, because as a mother of 2 black sons, I would never terrorize my children. And I don't know any mother personally that would trump up or fabricate something that severe that would affect her kids.
That's why her lying about being a black person is an issue, because she has made multiple claims where she says she's been a victim of hate crimes. So obviously, if she can lie about her race, then her credibility is in question as far as her claims concerning being a victim of hate crimes. That's the story. I was going to say I thought this reporter should have asked her why she claims to be black. But for the purpose of the story, I think his approach in this interview was good, because he did make the main point.
The president of the NAACP, who we think is a black woman who says she is the victim of hate crimes, might not be black. That seems like a misrepresentation.
I can understand that.
So that's the story, that this person who I think is mentally ill has been claiming that she's been the victim of multiple hate crimes. And most of the media has missed that point. The point that lying about her race damages her credibility as far as her claims about these supposed hate crimes. That point was totally ignored by the Young Turks.
Parents were saying that then she started changing her hair and changing the way that she spoke.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Did she feel pressure? Did she feel like such an outsider that she wanted to fit in more? And that's really where the seeds of this lie started to be planted. And does that eliminate? It doesn't eliminate any of the guilt, but does it make you a little more empathetic to kind of where she was coming from?
I'm totally empathetic with her. 100%. Not guilty. I let her pass on everything. I don't even care about the lies. I mean, the lies, they're her own business. They didn't hurt anybody. They're really pointless lies. I mean, it sounds a little trouble. It gave her a fun, embarrassing interview. But who cares? Why do we care? The organization hired her. They'll now either fire her or not. But listen to this. And here's who's guilty. I have not guilty for her. This is my official court paper. Not guilty, but her parents. I got to go this way. Her parents, come on, guilty.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, why are they throwing her under the bus?
Why not? How about no comment? Not interested.
Ben is ridiculously dumping on the parents and saying that Rachel is not guilty and the parents are guilty. Ben thinks the parents are obligated to play along with her lies. And obviously she's been abusive towards them. That's not nice to abandon your parents because they're white and you want to pretend you're black. The parents are obviously burdened with a daughter with mental issues, and he's saying that they're guilty. They were approached in the context of this story with her false claims. And she's made some other flaky claims, including that her parents supposedly would punish her and her siblings according to their skin complexion. Meanwhile, the Young Turks are embracing her. And news today is that Rachel Dolezal has stepped down from her position at the NAACP. And I still see that the media misses the point of the original story, that this woman has made multiple claims of hate crimes against her. My thinking is it's pretty clear that not only is she mentally ill and likes to pretend that she's black, but she also likes to pretend that she's a black victim. Boy, the Young Turks are really batting 1,000 here.
That is the point. Rachel Dolezal is mentally unstable and she was head of the NAACP, which basically lets you know just how jacked up the NAACP. It didn't matter that she was white. White folks helped found the NAACP. What matters is that she is unstable. How does someone, let me make this clear, how legitimate is your cause if you will allow mentally unstable people to advocate for it? And you don't even recognize that they're mentally unstable until their web of lies is exposed in front of your face. Let me help you. The so-called civil rights cause represented by the NAACP and other purported civil rights leaders is a lie. It is false. They are fighting a battle that was won almost 2 generations ago. That is the problem. And that is why you can get mentally ill liars like Rachel Dolezal into positions of leadership. And that is why black people who are real need to reject the civil rights leadership that exists for not being aware of the real issues and being so tied to what's already been dealt with that they can be duped. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Let's talk about this LeBron James fixation. We just finished up the NBA season. The Golden State Warriors have did sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James 4-0. I was hopeful for that result, but I was not confident that that would be the result. Let me tell you why I'm happy that it is the result. Because I am really one of those people who is tired of the idea that LeBron James is the greatest player of all time. He is not, cannot be, will not be. And it doesn't matter what he does from this point forward. He's already shown who he is. And who he is not going to get better. Let me just make it clear. He is who he is, and he's not going to get better. He is an outstanding player. He is a gifted player. He has a combination of abilities that we have rarely, if ever, seen somebody have on the basketball floor. He is still not the greatest player of all time. Because he does not do what the greatest player of all time must do, even in a team sport, and that is win. That is win. The idea that you can compare Michael Jordan, who is a 6-time champion, to LeBron James, who is a 6-time also ran, is ludicrous. Let's just make sure we understand something. LeBron James, for whatever reasons, doesn't have the mental and emotional wherewithal to be the greatest of all time in sports. He doesn't. He can't handle the moment. Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. What about the post game for Game 4? After the sweep, all of a sudden, LeBron James comes out with this revelation.
What happened? Self-inflicted. Post game after Game 1, very emotional. For a lot of different reasons, understanding how important the Game 1 is on the road for our ball club. What would that done for us? The way we played, the calls that was made throughout the course of that game. I had emotions on, the game was taken away from us. I had emotions of you just don't get an opportunity like this on the road versus Golden State to be able to get a Game 1. And, I let the emotions get the best of me and pretty much played the last 3 games with a broken hand. So that's what it is.
And then I recognize the finals just ended, but I know you're ready for these questions. Do you feel like you've played your last game for the Cavs?
I have no idea at this point. The one thing that I've always done is consider, obviously my family understanding, especially where my boys are at this point in their age. They were a lot younger. The last time I made a decision like this 4 years ago, I got a teenage boy, a preteen, and a little girl right now that wasn't around as well. So, sitting down and considering everything, but, my family is a huge part of whatever I decide to do. I'm in my career, and they will continue to be that. So I don't have an answer for you right now as far as that. At the end of the day, I came back because I felt like I had some unfinished business, and to be able to be a part of the championship team 2 years ago with the team that we had and in the fashion that we had is something I will always remember. Obviously, I think we all will remember that. I mean, it ended the drought for Cleveland. It was 50-plus years. I think we will all remember that in sports history. So, when you have a goal, I think any individual, anybody, male, female, whoever the case may be, when you have a goal and you like seek that goal out and you dream about that dream and you put everything in you can to guys like this brace, huh? You guys like this cast, huh? You want me to sit right here for it? I don't even know where I was, Rach. I'm sorry. Next question. I'm sorry.
We didn't talk about the broken hand of course, it didn't come back that the hand was actually broken. We didn't talk about the injured hand after Game 1. We didn't talk about it after Game 2. We didn't talk about it after Game 3. Only when the issue was no longer in doubt and there was no reason to talk about it at all does LeBron James talk about the issue. It's called making an excuse. It's called trying to diminish your opponent. Well, that's not what he was trying to do. No, that's exactly what he was doing. It doesn't matter whether or not he was trying. If it was not an issue to be brought up during the time of competition, it is definitely not an issue to be brought up once the competition is over. The greatest of all time would never talk about an injury unless it meant he couldn't play. LeBron James played. If you can play, you have no excuses. And if you have no excuses, then there's no reason to discuss an injury. There just isn't. Let me compare this to, I'm going to take you back to 1997, the finals, Game 5 of the finals. And I need to say this again. I am not a Michael Jordan fan. I simply appreciate the will to win, which is what marks the greatest of all time in any endeavor. It is the will to succeed. It is not filling up a stat book. It is success. It is achievement. Scoring 50 points in a game is not an achievement, particularly if you don't win. In 1997, Michael Jordan played a game in the finals. I believe this was actually in Utah. They were playing the Utah Jazz. And here is some of the coverage of that game, kind of in compilation.
Juan Carr, and here is Chris Carr's and that'll buy Carl below another 30 seconds or another minute of rest. Time and score will dictate when Carl below comes back in. Chris Carr with 11 points off the bench. Jordan, yes, the Jazz 77 and the Bulls 71 with 2 minutes gone by in the fourth quarter.
You're talking about him leaving Marvin, not playing anymore. He's having the time of his life out there.
We talked about that with him the other day, and I said, could you actually sit out next year? He claimed he could. Whether he's just positioning, we don't know. Jordan with the rebound. Jordan pops it down to Kukoc. Kukoc for 3. Yes.
Well, of course, this is not as much fun as baseball. No way.
The Jazz leading by 3. Well, Tony Kukoc might as well only take 3-point shots. That's all he's made in the last 2 games for Chicago. Carr's pants broken up. And Kukoc able to come up with it on the deflection. Jordan fires for 3. Yes. And he's tied the game at 77. And he did it in casual form, and you can see how exhausted Michael Jordan is. No reaction after the shot, just happy to go to the bench as timeout is called.
Poise, confidence, discipline, the exchange between Pippen and Jordan. Once, twice, right back. You do it, big guy. Pump fake, freezes the defense, the jumper, net. Then he staggers back to the bench, near exhaustion, ready to fall over. He's got his team tied now. Where is that bench? He gets there, sits back, and they put the ice bag on his neck. He won't even take the Gatorade.
He doesn't want to waste any energy. No high fives, no lifting water to his mouth. He is exhausted.
A heroic performance by Michael Jordan.
Everyone knew how messed up Michael Jordan was, but it wasn't because he said it. It was apparent when you looked at him. Couldn't help it. More importantly, he did talk about it in the post game. So I'm going to give you another clip that shows what people saw, and then at the end you're going to hear what Michael Jordan had to say about his condition and what the whole thing was about.
There is a big story going around this building right now. Michael Jordan is sick and missed the shoot-around.
I watched him in warm-ups. His face was ashen. His eyes were a little sunken. And I thought, no way. If he gets 12, 15 points, he's lucky.
It's like we said, he's ill. He'll go for 45.
I was amazed one time at a timeout near the end of the ball game when we called a timeout, how he came out of the ball game and plopped on the seat, and that's what he did. He just plopped down. And I said to Phil, I think at one point, I said, this guy's totally drained.
If you give up, then they give up. You know, so I didn't want to give up. You know, no matter how sick I was, or how tired I was, or how, low on energy I was.
Wants to go on Hornacek. Demanded the ball. Back.
It wasn't about Jordan. Jordan didn't make it about Jordan. If you give up, they give up. How many times have you seen LeBron James quit during the playoffs? There was the 2010 Game 6 against Boston when they were losing that series, and LeBron James quit. There was, how many other times was it? There was the whole 2011 finals where you needed the side of a milk carton to locate LeBron James. There have been other areas and times against the Spurs when they were losing that series in Miami. You couldn't find LeBron James. He just gives up. And that's something that disqualifies him from ever being the greatest of all time. It's why it is unlikely that he will ever be on another championship team. Not because he's not a good enough player, but because of now his stature and the money he commands, and he's not going to step back from that. Who can afford him? And when you bring him on and you don't have enough Dwayne Wades and Chris Bosches around him, he's not going to show up big enough to win. Remember, he only won in Cleveland because Adam Silver sat Draymond Green down for Game 5. That's it. And all the people who love LeBron James because he's a very talented player, and no one can take that away from him, and I'm not trying to, that misses the whole point. The greatest of all time are not the people who fill up stat sheets. That is a byproduct of being the greatest of all time. Herm Edwards made it very clear in 2002 during a rant when he was talking about why he was still working with his team to put in the effort, though they had a poor record.
You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.
You don't play to score 51 points unless that's going to get you a win. You don't play to have 20 rebounds unless that's going to get you a win. The effort you put in is not to fill the stat sheet. It is not to gain fantasy points. It is to win the game, and when it comes down to it, LeBron James does not do what the greatest of all times does, and that is win. Because he doesn't have the mentality to persevere on to winning. Say what you want about Jordan, who had many shortcomings. The one shortcoming he did not have. Whatever it takes to win, that he could do, that he would do. And he never made excuses. This is the problem we have as black people now. We're more concerned about style over substance. I don't care how many points you got if you didn't win. I don't care about police brutality if you're not winning in the community. I don't want to hear about white privilege and white racism when you're the ones who are robbing in your own community and you're not running the businesses that are there. Play the game to win. And then we'll talk about who's great. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. It is time to out toxic femininity. We've been distracted, and I do mean that sincerely. We've been distracted by the idea that men are so evil and they do so much harm that they must be dealt with. But we have forgotten that it is femininity, toxic femininity, toxic feminism, which I think would be an adequate description of the term toxic femininity would be feminism, has been doing tremendous harm for decades. It's only accelerated as of late. It is toxic femininity or feminism that gave us a sexual revolution that has led to us destroying more than 50 million American children in the womb in the last 4 decades. There's nothing good about that. And if bloodshed of the innocent is not toxic, I don't know what is. But when we go on beyond that, particularly the effects in the black community of toxic femininity, it has combined with the government to keep black men from a more normal relationship or more natural relationship with their children. Because women can side with the government or get the government to side with them and turn men into absent piggy banks or parents who are controlled by the state while from really interacting with the children freely, while women are rarely restricted in their interaction with children, relatively speaking. It's kind of why we have so many feminine acting males now, because particularly in the black community, there aren't any men raising them. There's a bunch of women. And therefore you have males who act like women. Because women can't teach a man how to be anything except what she expects. If you don't have a Y chromosome, you can't teach Y chromosome behavior. It ain't in you. But all that to go back to, it's really time to start looking at this stuff and looking at the real effects. So we've seen those effects, and now, of course, we're seeing other effects. I'll give you the most blatant example would be the Me Too lying, whereas one woman, now all women have been sexually assaulted by some men. That would be almost what they would have you believe. All women, you don't know, all of us have suffered. Really, every last one of you have been, and therefore every man is suspect or should be suspect. Except, of course, when a woman lies. And there have been some very famous cases where a woman lies, but very few cases where the woman who lies is punished. Now, there is an exception to that. The Western Journal reported back on the 9th of June that a female college student is on her way to jail after falsely accusing 2 athletes of rape.
An 18-year-old woman from New York was hit with charges after authorities say she falsely accused 2 Connecticut football players of rape and got them expelled. Nikki Uvino had claimed she was pulled into a bathroom by 2 Sacred Heart students during a football party in Bridgeport. However, a student overheard Uvino telling the 2 of them that she wanted to have sex with them. When pressed by cops, she said she denied because of her potential interest in another man. Uvino, who is from South Setauket, New York, was charged with falsely reporting an incident and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, according to the Connecticut Post. Her Stanford-based lawyer Mark Sherman told the Daily News in a statement that he expects Uvino to plead not guilty at her arraignment on March 3rd.
Well, she did do that, but there has been a plea deal, and according to that deal, she's going to be sentenced on August 23rd of this year to 3 years in prison, which will be suspended after the first year, and that's going to be followed by 3 additional years of probation. You realize that doesn't happen very often, and I'm sorry, the majority of these cases that come out as Me Too with allegations that are unsubstantiated are, I'm sorry, it's impossible to differentiate them from lies. If you cannot prove your allegation, then please explain to me why you are not lying. It's pretty straightforward. If you're saying someone did some harm to you, then please prove it so we can deal with that person who did harm. If you say someone harmed you and you cannot prove it, what is it that you want me to do to him? Or her, for that matter. So you have that issue, and that's a problem. The Me Too lies. Something it's interesting to me is it looks like this toxic femininity has now gone into venture capital concerns. The Federalist reported that Melinda Gates is bashing white guys and says she'll discriminate against them. She will preference women and non-whites over men and white people specifically for these immutable characteristics that have nothing inherently to do with business success. Melinda Gates has decided that to enter the venture capital world by sending her money to people based, at least partly, on their sex and skin color, she said in a recent Fortune magazine interview. It's been incredibly disappointing to watch how few women-led businesses are getting funded. Ultimately, if we want more innovation and better products, we've got to put more money behind women and minorities. Stop. How the heck does innovation and better products, how is that dependent upon melanin and gender? That's toxic femininity speaking right there. You're seeing this type of stuff, and it's. What about sexual assault in schools? It's almost weekly during the school year that we read about one more young teacher who should not, female teacher, and generally not necessarily unattractive, who should have no problem getting her fix from people her own age, not on campus, who is sexually involved with students, mostly male students. However, there is the occasional difference from that, and this was found in 2013.
Yeah, it's just shocking.
Shock and disbelief among students at Riverton High School over sex abuse allegations against a popular teacher and basketball coach.
I know all the kids really liked her, and she was a really energetic, outgoing person.
Everybody loved her. Like, my parents even were way shocked because my parents loved her, too. They thought she was a great teacher.
22-year-old Courtney Jarrell taught math and coached the sophomore girls basketball team. Prosecutors say between February and March of this year, Jarrell had sex with a 17-year-old student. The alleged encounter happened at Jarrell's home.
I heard that they were texting, and I know Miss Jarrell would always go to her basketball games.
The Jordan School District says Jarrell was suspended almost immediately after a parent complained about inappropriate behavior. A spokeswoman who declined to go on camera says the district has a moral conduct policy it takes seriously. She says every employee is required to sign off on that policy.
I was just surprised because it's never happened at our school that I know of, so it's just like a big shock that it would happen here. So
the school district says Jarrell had been at Riverton High for 8 months. This was her first teaching job.
First teaching job, young kid goes out, and her name was Courtney Louise Jarrell, and she's accused of touching a girl's breasts and genitals. So it's not just heterosexual child abuse. It's homosexual child abuse from women. That's toxic femininity as well. Not only are you abusing children, but now you're going into the homosexual vein to do it, which, I'm sorry, looks like the WNBA to me, but that's another issue because she was a basketball coach. So it's kind of par for the course. Have you noticed the remaking of guy films into girl films and how they don't seem to fare well? I mean, you remember Ghostbusters. Ghostbusters came out with a female cast. I don't know if you can even recall them all now. Only one I recall is the black young lady, Leslie somebody. I don't remember the movie at all, and it flopped. Now they're going to make Ocean's 8, which is a remake of Ocean's 11, which is a remake of something from remaking, but now it's going to be an all-girl cast. This is more toxic femininity. It is the replacing of anywhere men have been able to find success. We need to replicate that and show that women can succeed in the same areas so that we understand that men are not necessary. And if you don't think that that's what this is about, I feel bad for you. Because that's exactly what this is about, proving that men are not necessary. If you want to get your society back on track, and you should, then you're going to have to call out toxic femininity and start dealing with it not only from a cultural standpoint, but from a legal standpoint as well. Go back to the idea of innocent until proven guilty, which means a man should not be in any way, shape, or form excoriated just because a woman says he did something. And if it's proven that she lied, they should all get the same treatment as this woman in New York who's going to jail. All of them. Then we'll find out who's really Me Too. This is how you fix society. You're going to have to put men firmly back in charge, not with someone looking over their shoulder in case they act like men. They're supposed to act like men. And women, if you do not want women to, if you don't want men to act like men in the workplace, maybe it's you that need to leave it. Because men have made the world work for quite some time. And that's our show. God bless you. God keep you is our prayer. Definitely look forward to being with you next week. Until then, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.